We recently just took a trip on the Disney Dream out of Port of Miami on a very maritime cruise. Now, this was our very first cruise post the pandemic. We took our very first cruise in February of 2022, and this was our very first cruise that included like the entire ship being completely open and available, and no restrictions, no mask, no nothing. And so we wanted to kind of go over what our trip and was going on a very maritime cruise worth it, and what things did we like and what things did we not like, and things that we compared to our first cruise to our second cruise. So make sure you guys stick around because we'll go all over all of that right now. So we just went on a 5-night Disney's very maritime cruise on the gorgeous Disney Dream out of Port of Miami. This cruise took stops into Castaway Cay, Disney's private island, 2 days at sea, and a day at Cozumel, Mexico. Boarding, very simple, very easy. We checked in 30 days before because you can check up to 30 days before. That's how we were able to get our boarding time, everything else on the Disney Navigator app. We just checked in right at midnight, uploaded all our documents, but since this is now our first cruise post the pandemic, they do not require any vaccination cards uploaded, no negative test anymore. It is pretty much as it is business back to normal. And so we get to Port of Miami, we end up parking. It ended up costing about $110. And when you go on a Disney cruise, they sometimes want you to pay ahead of time on the parking. If you're going to Port Canaveral, they make you pay ahead of time. And same thing here. The last time we did this, we ended up had parking at the parking garage all the way at the end of the pier, and ended up taking a bus. This time we were able to go right in. We dropped off our stuff with the porters, went in, got checked in, and very simple. Within 10 minutes, we were waiting to board the ship. Now, our boarding time was for 11 a.m. However, they were a little delayed getting us on the ship. No big issues though. By 11:30 they were loaded. By 11:30, 12 o'clock they were loading us up onto the ship. And walking into this ship was amazing. The atrium was it just kind of was amazing to look at. Seeing all the decorations with the Christmas tree and everything else. As soon as we got on the ship, we immediately headed for lunch, and we went straight to Animator's Palette, which was open for lunch. Now we could have gone up to Cabanas, which is the buffet, but we decided we wanted to sit down and have a really good meal on this trip. And what was really nice was I went with my fiance Kayla, her mom, and her grandmother. And her mom does not eat gluten, so we ended up having to do a lot of stuff gluten-free. Now you will find that a lot of the food was very accessible for gluten-free stuff, and we'll kind of get more into that later. It was about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and our rooms were almost ready, so we ended up taking a quick walk around up onto the deck. And by this time our room was ready, and we had found that we did a guaranteed room, but we did not pick our room. We were trying to make sure we were also together, so we were in 2 rooms together with her family. And what was really nice is we were in what's called a deluxe family stateroom. What this just means is that some of the rooms can have this Murphy bed, or for us, we had a little bit extra space. Now, what was nice is we were able to get the conjoining room with her mom and her grandmother. And because of that, we were able to have an extended veranda. This made it really nice to have this extended veranda and everything else. This is also the first time that we actually got to see the sail-away party. The sail-away party was something they didn't do on the last one when we were on the Disney Magic. This usually takes place up on the top 2 decks, or on the pool decks. So on this one, it was deck 11 and deck 12. And I thought it was pretty cute, but I was anticipating more. Now, we weren't as close as we could have been, and I honestly thought I couldn't hear the horn that well until I went back and edited the video. We were going to try to hang out a little bit longer, but unfortunately our dinner was early, and we ended up having main dinner, which means almost every night our dinner was at 5:45. On our first cruise, we had second dining, because on the Disney cruises, you have two time dinings, and you have rotational dining. Rotational dining just means that there are 3 dining locations on the ships, and that means you go from each night you change which restaurant you're at. But what's also nice is the servers do stay with you. So like our first night we were at Enchanted Garden, which is the one place that Kayla wanted to eat at, and it was really nice. Now, the first time we went on this cruise, Disney cruise, the food was absolutely amazing. Not saying the food wasn't great on this cruise, it just wasn't as great, but also we were in that first dining and it was a full cruise, so that could have taken into account for it. But I'm not saying any of the food we had was awful. Um, and so we ended up having dinner at Enchanted Garden. Very, very good. Really enjoyed it quite a lot. So after dinner, we ended up wandering around the ship a little bit more, hanging out, seeing what there was to see. But because it was our first night, we had to make the drive to Miami. We ended up going to bed around 9 or 10 o'clock. So the next day we got up and it was our Castaway Cay day. Now Castaway Cay is Disney's private island, and this is a must. I mean, this is one of the coolest things you could do. The island is amazing. I ended up doing the 5K, which meant yes, I did run on my vacation, but the 5K was a lot of fun. It's also nice just knowing this is only that cruise ship. So with Disney's private island, Castaway Cay, you only have one ship there at a time, which means you only have those people on. It's not like other ports of calls where you can have multiple ships, everything else. There will never be two Disney cruises at Castaway Cay at a time. We ended up hanging out most of our day at Serenity Bay, the adult only section. However, though, did walk around and show you guys the other area where the family beach was, the slides, everything else. And to my surprise, it wasn't as busy. For years I've heard these stories about going to Castaway Cay on a full cruise ship, but walking around the island didn't feel like that. So, and then we ended up having lunch there as well, but we had the Serenity Bay barbecue. And this was really nice because of the fact that it was secluded and we didn't have to wait on the whole line. So most of the food we got was very fresh. And this was honestly probably the best lunch we had on our cruise because we got like fresh steaks, we got fresh burgers. It was very, very, very good. Now, it was time for us to get back on the ship because we were only there from about 8:30 to 4:45. We had to be back on the ship. And again, because we had that early dining, we ended up having to get back on the ship around 3 o'clock. And so we got on the ship, ended up showering, rested for a little bit. Then it was time to cast off, and it was really interesting because I did not see this last time we were on our last cruise of the people who live on the island sending us off as we head off onto our next day, which was the next day was a day at sea. Dinner that night took place at Royal Palace. Royal Palace is another one of those themed towards Disney princesses, and again, this food was good. Like I said, nothing was like mind-blowing, like, oh my god, I had to have it again, except for all the cheesecake I had on this cruise, because I had a lot of cheesecake on this cruise. And so, very good. Tonight was our first night also with seeing a Broadway-style show, and it had the Golden Mickeys. The Golden Mickeys, all it was just like it's a Broadway-style presentation show that they handed out Golden Mickeys and stuff, and it was very, very good because they had classic music, they had very much, it was just very good. I always recommend saying going on a Disney cruise, you gotta check out the Broadway-style shows. But because we had that first dining, our show usually ended up being very, very busy all the time, so we had to get there very early. Probably moving forward, we're probably going to go back to doing only the second dining, because we had second dining on our very first cruise, and we really, really enjoyed second dining, because we felt like on anytime we had to go see a show, we were kind of yes, there was a lot of people, but it wasn't as busy as I felt with being on that first dining. So that may be the only thing that I was really upset with, but it wasn't awful, and also kept throwing off our entire day because it felt like we were very time constricted when we want to do something. Like, oh, we got to have dinner at 5:45. Then if we want to do anything, we have to make it quick, because it also took a while with that first dining because it was always full. Second dining, you can maybe get away with it not being as full. So maybe you can also change around where you eat some nights to night, so if you don't get as much time. So, but our next day ended up being our day at sea because we were traveling all the way from Castaway Cay, which is in the Bahamas, all the way to Cozumel, Mexico. And because the Disney Stream, which is a beautiful ship, it could only go 22 miles an hour, it took us a full day of travel to get all the way to Cozumel, Mexico. Now, a day at sea, a lot of people get concerned of, well, is there enough to do? There is. Trust me, there is. You have the pool deck. You have the Buena Vista Theater to go watch movies. They have a ton of trivia, which we ended up going to do. There's a lot of activities. On this particular day, we saw the making of the Disney Dream, which was just a little presentation of how the dream was built. And I got to go check out a ship tour with one of the cast members. So it ended up being really, really nice to get to see that because you kind of learned a lot of random things that you would never expect on a Disney cruise. So it kind of makes you kind of learn a little bit. Besides that, like I said, the day at sea was very nice. We spent a lot of time on our veranda that day, also up on the second, just on the top decks, because of the fact that it was just relaxing. We ended up having dinner at Animator's Palette because of the fact that we did. This was like our only night we had dinner there, and the only thing I complain about Animator's Palette is that definitely felt like the busiest restaurant. Like there were a lot of seats, and yes, I know they had to have a lot of people, but like we felt very crowded at Animator's Palette. That was my only complaint. The food at Animator's Palette actually was probably the second best night of food we had. Very good. They even had a little show with Crush the Turtle, but you had to be kind of close to one of the screens. But he ended up going from screen to screen, so it was kind of cool. So if you're one of those tables, you could interact with him, kind of answer questions with him. So I thought that was a really unique thing. So if you have those little kids who love Crush the Turtle, who just want to answer questions, you're able to have that. Now, it's just going to be hard because you can't pick which table you're going to be at. That's why I kind of recommend being that second dining, because if you wanted to be closer to the screens, you probably could. This night, we got to see Beauty and the Beast, the Broadway show. And this Broadway show this was probably one of the best shows I've ever seen on a Disney cruise. And on the Disney Magic, when we went on that cruise, we saw Disney Dream, which was their Broadway show, which was kind of funny because it's kind of named for each of the ships. But yeah, so this show was amazing. I mean, it literally looked like they just took it from Broadway, copy pasted right onto this ship. It was done well. The puppetry with like Lumiere and Cogsworth, the music and everything else was stunning. I was very, very pleased with how this was. So our next day ended up being at Cozumel, Mexico. And Cozumel, we didn't really have plans to get off. A lot of times with us, we find that there's so much to do on the ships that we don't like make excursions. We originally had an excursion. We had a small issue with this. So we had an excursion to go to a Mayan temple where there was pools, a beach, food, you can explore ruins and stuff like that. And it was going to be $50 a person. We were kind of like, oh, we'll do this. It's kind of nice. However, though, her mom and her grandma didn't want to do that, so we decided to cancel. Well, we had canceled ahead of time, but for some reason it did not cancel Kayla's mom and her grandma's. So we ended up having to go to the Port Adventures. They gave us issues with it. They were having issues with it, and they were just like, well, we'll see what we can do. Well, the day came and they went and talked to them, and they said, listen, if you can't take them off, we want to get put on. Well, because there were no more spots left, and me and Kayla cannot get put with them, they ended up just canceling and not even worrying about it at that point. So, a little weird. I wish they would have just been able to cancel it outright, but it is what it is. I mean, we were able to get it canceled, didn't get charged for it, which was nice. But while we were in Cozumel, Kayla, one of the things we did on our very first day, and I recommend doing this, is going up to the Senses Spa, the spa and fitness center, and going up there because they usually have a raffle of prizes of money off of like massages and things. So Kayla's mom actually ended up winning $100 off a service, and because her mom and her grandma didn't really want to do anything, it was also kind of like a small birthday trip for Kayla. She ended up going up and getting her nails done. Now, this ended up taking close to 2 hours, but Kayla was very, very pleased with the service. They took great time. They really cleaned everything, really made it relaxing. And so during that 2 hour period, I ended up wandering the ship, and that's where I actually created the ship tour that I actually uploaded. So if you want to check that out, I'll put it in the corner, wherever that ends up being. So if you want to see what the Disney Dream looked like, you can see the entirety in that right there. We did decide to get off at Cozumel. We ended up only getting off for about an hour because we didn't want to get... We got off a lot later. We didn't get off to about 1 in the afternoon, and the ship left. We needed to be back on the ship by 4:30. So we went off, got some things, walked around the marketplace, found a Starbucks, found Wi-Fi, because we didn't buy any Wi-Fi package on this, which was nice to also see the Wi-Fi package change. So we'll get to that in a second. And so we ended up buying a few things. Kayla got a new wind chime, and it was really nice. Just kind of get to see a new port of call we've never seen before, because we've only been to Nassau and Castaway Cay. So it was a good experience. So the internet package, really quickly, Disney finally did change this. Now, previous years, it was all based on usage, amount, and then you paid by that. Now it is based upon speed. And so there are three tiers of it. There's like basic, web surfing, and not streaming, because they don't recommend streaming like Netflix and stuff like that. And it goes from like $10 a day to $15 a day to $20 a day. I'll double check all that, but it was nice to see that they did change that up a little bit, because the last time we were on our cruise, it was very confusing them trying to explain it to us. But also beware, on your first night of a Disney cruise, you do get free complimentary Wi-Fi up to a certain amount. So kind of nice, because you can send some messages off, take some quick pictures, upload to your social medias, stuff like that. I probably don't think I'll ever use a Wi-Fi package, maybe, but unless we go on a 7-night cruise, but what's nice is with this one, you can pick how many nights you want it. Do you want it for that night, or do you want it for the entire trip? So this night we ended up having dinner again at Enchanted Garden. Now this was also the Pirates Day. Day. Pirates Day usually are on cruises that are more than 4 nights, and essentially it just means pirate themed everywhere. So like when we went to Enchanted Garden for dinner, the servers were all dressed up in pirate attire. They were all pirated out. It was pirate themed food. In years past, there was usually a little show in the cruise we took, and even in years past, there's always been a little show that takes place in all the dining rooms. But we didn't see that this go around, and we were kind of weird. It was kind of weird in general, because on our last cruise, with the restrictions, they had a lot of shows going on almost every time we were in there. And so, not seeing that at all, this one was really disappointing, because we were kind of expecting that. I'm kind of hoping maybe when we go on the Fantasy in July and October of this year, maybe we'll see that, but we'll just have to see when we get there. This all night also took a little bit of a turn for the worse, because at dinner I ended up feeling really sick. Like, when I say really sick, I think I got really seasick this night. What ended up happening was I ended up getting very dehydrated. So I left early from dinner, went up to the room, laid down with the idea of just laying down, not really doing much. Ended up going to bed at 7, sleeping all the way through. This also caused me to miss the fireworks show and the Pirates themed show on the pool deck. But I did see it on the last cruise, and it was really cool. So that was kind of one of those disappointing moments, but it's kind of one of those disappointing moments where I wish I could have tried to make it through it, but you just don't want to risk getting more sick while you're on the cruise. So our very last full day was another day at sea, because now we had to go from Cozumel, Mexico, all the way up back to Port of Miami. And this day was again filled with a ton of trivia, and Kayla, her mom, and her grandmother went and did the ship tour that I did earlier in the cruise, and they also really enjoyed it. They kind of wish they had done that earlier, because then they could have learned some of the tricks and traits of how to find your stuff around the ship. But like I said, we ended up doing a lot of trivia, and this was the day we got the closest to winning a trivia, and we've taken a ton of trivia on all the cruises. Like Kayla literally, we did a Lion King trivia, and Kayla got everything right until the bonus question, which was, when did the Lion King debut on Broadway? And they said 1998, but since coming back, it was 1997. So we have discrepancies. Kayla's still mad about it. But then we also did some of our favorite, which was Disney Toons trivia, which was amazing and a lot of fun to do that. So we ended up, and what's weird was, so with the dining, some of the sit-down restaurants like Royal Palace, Enchanted Garden, Animator's Palette are usually open for breakfast. On our last cruise, we never ate at Cabanas, the buffet. This cruise, we ate almost every breakfast at Cabanas. We ate a ton of lunches at Cabanas. And I'll say the lunch and breakfast at Cabanas was very, very good. I probably could have been happy never going to any of the sit-down places for breakfast or lunch. Unlike on our last cruise where we literally ate at sit-down all the time. But I think also why we ate so much at the last one was because we felt the service was very quick. On this one, it felt like it was a lot slower. But again, that also could just mean because there was more people on the ship. We found out that this ship had close to 3,500 people on the ship, and that is pretty much at capacity. And so it's just because that's almost to the capacity of the Disney Dream. What we found out when I was talking to a few cast members is that the very maritime cruises tend to be some of the most busiest, because that's when people can get off, and it's also something like they want to do as a family. Now they say going in like October, September, you can sometimes get closer to like that halfway levels. Now, it never felt busy except when we had to go to the atrium to check out like the tree lighting or the final wave goodbye and all that stuff. So there were times it did feel busy, but it never felt overwhelming busy. It never felt like, say, you know me, where I go to the theme parks, how can I feel like the theme parks all the time? So, in comparison, the Very Merry Time Cruise, I don't know if I'll do another. I don't think I'll be itching to be like, okay, if I see a cruise and it's between a regular one or a Very Merry Time Cruise, I think I'd just go with whatever's the cheapest. Um, they didn't have a lot for the Merry Time. Like I wish they would have had like a night show, like a nighttime show, or even like a firework display. I was kind of hoping that's what it was going to be because on the Halloween on the High Seas, the Disney Halloween cruises, they have some of those fireworks for the Halloween cruises. So it was really not. It was kind of like, yeah, you had the A Train, you saw Mr. and Mrs. Claus. They were, you had characters dressed up in their attire and stuff like that. But it definitely felt like there wasn't as much Christmas in it. So now I don't know if that's just because this was the first like fully capacity cruise back in the Christmas season. I don't know. I'm not gonna knock it. I still enjoyed the like. I think when we take comparison of our first cruise and this cruise, a lot of things on the first cruise were really great and everything else. Not everything was open though, so that didn't help. And on this cruise, everything was open. They were back to capacity. No mask requirements whatsoever. No vaccines. No stressing as we waited in the port like we did waiting for our first cruise. And so it was. I still think our first cruise was the best, but that also maybe just because that was our very first cruise, especially on the Disney Magic on a very low capacity. And so it was a very good cruise. And like, if you're wondering, should I take a very maritime cruise? Well, if you enjoyed Christmas, I would say yes, take it. But if you find one that's cheaper, maybe try to find like the brand new Pixar at Seas, the Halloween on the High Seas, any of these specialty like Marvel Days ones. Those are usually some of the better ones to do. Like I liked Maritime. I love the Disney Dream. The Disney Dream is a beautiful ship. I still think the Disney Magic is still my favorite, but this ship was very beautiful. And I thought it was a great layout. Very confusing at times trying to learn where everything was. But it was just overall it was very good. Like I said, comparison wise, this was a very good cruise, but very busy. And it was a lot of days at sea, and I kind of wish we had more port of calls. So we do have plans of doing 2 cruises this year on the Disney Fantasy, one in summertime and one for Halloween. Now our Halloween one is going to probably be a 7-night cruise, and our one in the summertime will probably be a double dip at Castaway Cay, which would be really nice to do because I think 2 days at Castaway Cay is better than only one. So, but if you guys did enjoy kind of our fun, quick recap of everything, leave a like, hang out. If you want to check out our entire vlog post, because I wanted to just do a quick wrap up review of it where it's like instead of you watching 5-6 hours of footage, you just watch 25 to 30 minutes. This is what kind of this it was. If you're interested to see what kind of merch we got, I also have that video, and I'll put that right here. And if you want to see our entire playlist, I'll put it underneath right there. But again, make sure you guys don't forget to subscribe to check out more of our content, especially with more cruising content coming this year. We'll be doing a lot more of these style videos after we cruise, and just in general after we do anything, if we stay at a Disney resort and stuff like that. So now let me know in the comments below. Would you go on a very maritime cruise, or would you just go on the cheapest cruise you can afford on a Disney cruise? Because in my opinion, I think it's worth doing a Disney cruise if you can afford it. I know it's not for everyone, but it never felt like we were like slammed with Disney the entire time on this trip. So, but with all that being said, as I do head out, make sure you guys subscribe, check out the other videos, and we'll see y'all next time.